Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to the session. We'll just wait a few more minutes just to give time for colleagues to log in. But a huge welcome to this session on flood preparedness initiatives. So yeah. If you want, feel free to introduce yourself to colleagues on the chat, your name and country, position. I cannot hear anything. Can anybody hear me?
We hear you loud and
Yes,
clear.
we hear you.
We can
Yes.
hear you.
Okay. You can hear me. Lily, that's Lala, isn't it? Hmm. Can participants just it might be your mic as we can hear Oseki. Okay. Okay, please check your mic and yeah, do introduce yourselves to each other. Welcome to everybody for this session. Okay, and maybe okay, got about 14 people. We will be recording the session, right? So just so you know, we'll be recording, so you could share it with colleagues afterwards. Okay. And maybe Francisco or Mom, just let me know when you think it's a good moment to start.
Maybe let's wait a moment, but Hussein, if you want to explain how can we try to use the simultaneous translation?
Yes, sure. Yeah, hello everyone. So far we have 17 colleagues attending the session. I will just explain a little bit how we can use some Teams functionalities. So if you go on the webinar or the meeting screen, you have these three dots with more actions. You click on it, and then we have the language and speech, and then we have the show live captions. And once we click on them, I have the setup on my side to translate from English to French. So if you would like to change the language from this setting icon here, we have language setting, and then I can choose to translate to any language that I want. We have almost 40 languages here to translate to, and then you just close this window and we continue. Sometimes the translation might not be so fluent, just it is a technical issue. It's a new solution coming with Teams, so use it as an assistant to get what is in English. We will share later on the recording with a transcript as well in English, and in you can translate it to any other language. So I will leave it here for this now. Just as Seki mentioned, the webinar or the whole meeting will be recorded and transcribed as well for to be shared later on with other colleagues.
So thank you. I've got mine set on Japanese. It's actually quite interesting. So yeah, I think should we start? Like 4 minutes in. A huge welcome to this session. We have invited all and any of the shelter cluster coordination teams from all around the world. Oh, is that a drone? Maybe Kelly. Okay. And maybe a few of us remember last year we started this topic, and maybe if you could go to the next slide, please, where we had this situation where more than 14 countries across the globe, coming from a conflict setting, experienced a huge number of flooding. It displaced over 1.3 million people and damaged over 650 homes. And this created an additional need of 4.3 million people in need of shelter, and 6.1 million people losing essential households. I think. So we wanted to be a little bit ahead of the curve. We have already seen some flooding across different regions and countries. So with the challenges that we are all facing in front of us, and with all the wealth of experiences from across the world, we wanted to host this all cluster coordination team meeting, hosted by the Global Shelter Cluster team, which we see as one team. You know, like us from the UNHCR had been focusing on the conflict triggered clusters, and IFRC from the natural disaster settings. But then we're seeing these two are so interlinked. One happens after another, vice versa, etc. So this is a session for all clusters and hosted from both sides. So with that, I think we know a lot of those challenges that hinder DRR efforts, limiting infrastructure development, etc. And also, we know that this creates multiple displacements. The pressures from flooding, insecurity, livelihoods, all kind of contributing to the situation of the most vulnerable. So this session is really to share. We have many exciting speakers from different countries lined up. So I'll hand over to Francesco. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Seki, and thank you, Sain, for starting the session. I'm stepping in on behalf of Pablo. I'm Pablo, the Global Shelter Coordinator on behalf of IFRC, with pleasure. And I think we would like to reiterate the idea that we are trying to bring to the forefront that flooding may happen in different contexts, maybe the driver of the crisis, or maybe just the amplifier of the crisis. So nevertheless, we would like to explore these dimensions. And in this session, we'd like to explore how the current initiatives on flooding preparedness, ongoing or things that have been completed in some countries, and how much can we learn and share through this webinar, and keep the conversation going, and bring the conversation to a peer-to-peer collaboration process. In particular, in trying to address the adversity of this current funding situation, I think it's important that we support each other, finding best ways of addressing some of the common issues across countries. So, can I ask for the next slide for the agenda? Yes, thank you so much. So we divided the discussion in basically 3 blocks. So the first one will be some introductory notes on general numbers on flooding patterns across the globe, and some presentations from 5 countries that are among the most affected on the planet, or they've been particularly active on flooding preparedness initiatives. We will use that to stimulate a bit the conversation, so you can have a bit of a understanding of we in different contexts, the case of Bangladesh, Madagascar, and Pakistan are non-conflict contexts, South Sudan and Yemen conflict contexts, how the flooding issues affect the way you think through and prepare for flooding events. And we hope that stimulates a discussion across the other classes, and probably we try to bring to the forefront the ideas and the practices and the challenges that in the different country clusters that you are responsible for. And then we will try to discuss a bit some of the resources we have at global level and what next steps could we take from here. So we hope that this exchange will be useful for some of you, maybe not for all of you, but I think the idea that we can, on this topic and on other topics, have an honest and generous exchange of ideas and contribute to enhance the knowledge, sharing among clusters in general, and encourage country teams to communicate between each other or through us if need be, and it put good practice in the forefront and use a bit more of the lessons learned to improve the ways we work. I will now pass the floor to my colleague Alex to look at some of the statistics on flooding across the planet. Thank you.
Thank you, and hello everyone. So you can see on this map that we gather data from the International Disaster Database, which is a website I encourage you to have a look. You have a database from many type of disasters, including different type of floods, but also earthquakes and other hazards. So in Asia, you can see that the number of people who are affected by floods in average is more than 2 million. Bangladesh and Pakistan, they are really the two countries in the world where we have a high number of people affected. There were some years where we had more than 30 million people affected. Yeah, most of the countries are affected. You may have maybe different data at your level, but I think it gives a good overview of the situation and which countries are the most at risk. Next one. The next map is about Africa. It looks pretty much like the map we've published with the advocacy paper last year. I will share the paper on the chat for those who haven't seen it. And among the countries most affected, you have Nigeria, Mozambique, South Sudan, Sudan. But it really depends on the years. There are years really where we can have a very high number, like in Somalia, for instance. So this is just to give you an overview of the risk of floods. And we also know that the number is increasing in general due to climate change. Even if there are some countries like Bangladesh where we see a small decrease, it could be linked to preparedness. So that's also interesting to see. So over to you, Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. So we will start the presentations from Bangladesh. They were organized by alphabetical order. There's no specific lineup significance. So I'll pass the word to my colleague Zahir from Bangladesh. He's a shelter cluster coordinator there. And please take the floor.
Thank you very much.
And request us to anyone to move the slides, okay?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Francisco, for organizing the sessions. And basically, I am gonna share the situation of Bangladesh about the flood. This is basically Bangladesh is the country of resilience that has long battled the forces of nature with unwavering strength. Yet, Flooding remains one of the most persistent challenges we face almost every year. Rising waters put nearly 60% of our population at risk. While most floods last between 10 to 20 days, but recent floods have stretched beyond 60 days, uh, testing the endurance of our communities like never before. The impact is profound. Over half of our houses, around 58%, are kacha. Kacha means roof and wall made from corrugated galvanized iron sheets and plinth most of the times made by mud. This makes them incredibly vulnerable when floodwater raised. Just last year, in 2024, more than 350,000 houses were destroyed or damaged by severe flooding. Families lost their livelihoods and their sense of security. This is very briefly I shared the situation of Bangladesh about the flood. Next slide, please. We are segmented our my presentation. Basically, the government and humanitarian agencies have embraced a proactive approach to flood preparedness through the cluster system. Strategy officially approved to ensure coordinated and efficient disaster response. In Bangladesh, each cluster is led by government of Bangladesh with designated representative bridging communication between government and clusters. And they have very active participation to all cluster events. Another preparedness activities is the localization. The localized humanitarian response is essential in a crisis situation, as local organizations are the first responders who understand their communities best. During the 2024 floods, shelter cluster coordinated response at the subnational level, while local organization managed response efforts at the district level, making crucial decisions. This approach ensures efficiently relevance and sustainability in disaster recovery. Basically, shelter cluster partners had deployed their human resources to coordinate the responses, and on behalf of shelter cluster, we organized many capacity building activities for our cluster coordinators at district level. To further strengthen our ability to withstand these disasters, the standing order of disaster has been put in place. This framework clearly defines the roles and responsibilities of the disaster management committee, spanning from the national level down to wards level. Wards level is the lowest administration level of government in Bangladesh. It also establishes the crucial role of humanitarian organizations in providing aid when disaster strikes. These standing orders basically are designed for what will be the humanitarian organization's role during, before, during, and after the disasters. Our another achievement in 2022, we introducing the risk informed index at the sub-district level. State network led this process. This tool enables us to identify vulnerable areas more effectively, allowing us to take proactive measures to minimize disaster risks and enhance preparedness. With accurate data, we can anticipate challenges and implement strategies of responses. Another milestone in 2020 was the completion of the national census, which provides invaluable data on shelters across the country. Shelter Cluster has been compiling pre-crisis information from the census, analyzing housing patterns, housing materials, electricity access, and population vulnerabilities. This data set empowers us to understand the potential impact of floods and to develop informed strategies for mitigating risks. Our efforts basically go beyond immediate response. The Shelter Cluster Bangladesh has been diligently conducting a shelter vulnerability and capacity assessment. This assessment helping us analyze how communities cope with disasters and what forms of assistance they need before and after the disaster. Basically, as a humanitarian community, we can support 10 to 15% of the affected people. Every affected people cope with their traditional knowledges, and we are trying to identify this coping mechanism, which will be help us to implement our responses at the community level. Basically, these findings of this assessment will guide us on designing response modalities that are acceptable, effective, and aligned with community needs. Equally vital is our commitment to early flood warning and community preparedness. The government, in partnership with humanitarian organizations, have developed an advanced network for disseminating flood forecasts to the community level. By providing communities with early information, we empower them to take timely precautionary measures, reducing damage, saving lives, and building resilience. Sorry. Basically, preparedness is the foundation of effective disaster response. We believe it, which is why we conduct annual contingency stock profiling of our partners. This initiative ensures that we are ready to provide swift assistance when disaster strikes. By assessing available resources, we can determine how many people can reach quickly, ensuring that aid is delivered without delay. Sorry. Next slide, please. Shelter, we believe shelter is more than just a structure. It is security, dignity, and the foundation for rebuilding lives. Recognizing this fundamental need, Shelter Cluster Bangladesh has developed shelter standards and guidelines, and that are widely accepted by our shelter cluster partners. These guidelines offer multiple response options and packages, enabling partners to establish their repositioning stock and make informed choices about the most suitable responses for each situation. We work very closely with the government and in collaboration with the government. Shelter Cluster is working tirelessly to develop various housing designs with a strong focus on environmentally friendly models. Community validation has been successfully completed for each design, ensuring that the solutions are practical, sustainable, and well accepted by the people who will benefit from them. This effort has streamlined the implementation process for our partners, making it easier for them to select the right shelter options for community after or before the disaster. Additionally, Shelter Cluster Bangladesh has taken a significant step forward by developing the environmental country profile. This is the comprehensive document that outlines key environmental considerations for Bangladesh to respond under any disaster. This initiative has been supported by the Global Shelter Cluster, whose contributions have played an essential role in guiding response planning, implementation, and monitoring of the responses. We extend our sincere gratitude to Global Shelter Cluster for their unwavering support in this remarkable endeavor. Finally, capacity building of our partners is another pillar of our work. Basically, many local organizations are working at the district level and they don't have any opportunities for training and skill development activities. To address this, Shelter Cluster Bangladesh organizes capacity building events throughout the year. We deploy resource persons from our partners to facilitate this valuable learning experience. By investing in knowledge and expertise, we empower our partners to deliver strong and more resilient shelter solution. Basically, we have lots of national, international agencies in Bangladesh. Expertise, we basically request to cluster partners to deploy their human resources voluntarily, and they support us tirelessly throughout the year. Next slide, please. Thank you. Challenges. Basically, it is not possible to avoid challenges in every steps. We face challenges in every time. Challenges basically come continuously. I'm mentioning basically a few of them. In Bangladesh, shelter support remains one of the most resource-intensive sector, while organizations aim to reach as many people as possible. The high cost of shelter assistance means that donor support for the sector remains low. This imbalance creates a significant gap in emergency and early recovery response. Another processing concern is the lack of integration between humanitarian and development activities. This disconnect presents a formidable obstacle that hinders long-term recovery and resilience in disaster-affected communities. Whenever a disaster strikes, numerous small organizations rush forward to help. Their willingness to serve is commendable indeed. But without a unified approach, challenges in management emerge. Each organization operates independently, often without coordination, leading in inefficiencies in response efforts. In 2024, while coordinating the flood response, we observed a concerning reality. At the district and sub-district level, humanitarian coordination within government administration remains underdeveloped. This gap in leadership and structure makes it difficult to implement a cluster-based approach, further complicating the relief operations. It was a big challenge. Additionally, while many organizations generously provide aid, we frequently encountered a recurring issue: the distribution of inappropriate and unsuitable relief items. This is not only wastage of valuable resources, but also fails to address the urgent needs of the affected community. Basically, we faced these challenges in 2022 and in last year, 2024. Next slide, please. Lesson learned. Every crisis presents lessons, but also opportunities to refine our approach for a more resilient future. Coordination must be strengthened from the central level to the district and sub-district levels. When the flood struck, we found ourselves working directly at the district level, requiring greater synergy between national coordination and local execution. A more streamlined approach will ensure swift, effective action. Then local NGOs must be empowered through capacity building activities. Local NGO scope remains limited. And unless clusters actively organize capacity building events, these organizations cannot reach their full potential in responding to emergencies. By investing in their skills, we equip them to act with confidence and efficiency. Orienting district and sub-district administration about humanitarian cluster approach is very essential. We think that our collaboration with government is crucial indeed. Yet there remains a gap in understanding. By providing clear guidance and structured orientation, we can foster better coordination, ensuring a more cohesive response. Local organizations need guidance in implementing response efforts. The right response options can make all the difference in alleviating sufferings. A structured framework with mentorship from experienced partners will empower local actors to make informed decisions. Another lesson learned is that one of the greatest challenge we have faced is the data crisis in past disasters. Without reliable information, basically response efforts are hampered definitely. This experience has motivated us to proactively compile pre-crisis data, ensuring we are better prepared when disaster strikes again. That's why we are compiling now pre-crisis data collection from census, and we already conducted the shelter vulnerability and capacity assessment with voluntary participation of our shelter cluster partners. Finally, actively engaging partners in cluster activities will encourage them to support the cluster, as there is only coordinator for the shelter cluster, and it is impossible for one person to do everything alone. Sorry. Basically, in Bangladesh, shelter cluster gets lots of supports from our cluster partners, and they are also basically provide the supports to shelter cluster in by joining technical working group, by mobilizing their human resources, conducting the trainings. These kinds of activities we receive from our partners. I will stop here, and thank you very much. If you have any questions, then we can discuss few minutes or later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zaid. Thank you so much for your time. I will pass the floor to Andrea Nina, our dear colleague and Shelter Cluster Coordinator in Madagascar. And I will ask, for the sake of time, that we try to stick to around 5 minutes of presentation. Thank you so much. The floor is yours, Andrea Nina.
Thank you, Francisco. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good morning, depending on where you are. So here in Madagascar, the context of humanitarian shelter operations, there is repetitive occurrence of flood and also cyclones. So it was essential that we highlight the need to link immediate assistance to longer-term resilience approaches with an eye of DRR and environmental process considerations. So thanks to the support of UNDRR and the Global Shelter Cluster, the cluster was able to hire a consultant this year to shape with us a guidance on entry points to include DRR with a focus on shelter and settlement assistance. So what has been done so far? So far we had shaped a pragmatic and realistic standard operating procedure and SOP, which will facilitate humanitarian response and will integrate TRR dimension both in preparation and in emergency interventions. So this SOP is in a checklist format and have been tried by 3 organizations who has provided their feedback, and those feedback has been used for recommendation to improve the document. Second action that have been taken and have been set in place is an action plan for integrating TRR and environment concern into humanitarian response. And this document offers an overview of main hazards that occur in Madagascar first, and then highlight the vulnerabilities that are encountered in the country. So in terms of technical vulnerabilities, which means materials, appropriate technical constructions, and so on and so on, as well the community vulnerabilities, because there is some absence of community risk management mechanisms within the community on site. And third, the individual vulnerabilities, which is linked to social, economic, and sometimes physical conditions of individual or households. In this action plan, we have also 5 proposals guidelines of feasible projects, and those guidelines integrate the 4 dimensions of the approach to DRR in the shelter cluster. Those 5 approaches are, as you've seen on the screen, mainly about comprehension of risks, and the support to government, the preparedness as well, and yeah. So we could also add in this action plan a mapping of potential financing strategy for the action plan and also for the 4 proposed projects. Finally, a third document that we have viewed this year is a light review of the main existing national policies on integrating DRR and environment into humanitarian shelter and settlement operations. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Yeah, challenges. So challenges, although a document capitalizing the good practice was intended to do as a deliverable, the production of such document has encountered difficulties due to the unavailability of documentation resources, and furthermore, many of our focal points within the entities are no longer there. Another challenge that we face is the emergency time frame. It was difficult to fit the DRR activities into the short timetable because the time frame of emergency response was limited to 45 days. So the test was a bit difficult in this way. First challenge that we encountered is the availability and accessibility of funds in time for TRR and NPS in response. Why? Because the funding that organization could get was essentially for rapid response and did not really allow them to extend to TRR and NPS response. As challenge also, we can say that weak leadership within the shelter cluster in imposing NPS and TRR in line with response activities is there. Why? Because we tend to sometimes follow funders' rule, and when they impose TRR and NPS activities, we stick to the requirements. But but it should be also better if within the cluster we can set up this rule of imposing NPS and TRR activities within the response for emergency and also for the other activities. Next slide, please. Okay, so for lessons learned from the pilot test, as I said before, so more awareness is needed in organizations of how to integrate nature-based solution and DRR activities in response, and how to identify activities that are relevant to the local context where they work. Another lesson learned is the need to ensure that within the cluster, the SOP is translated into concrete preparedness and response activities for future humanitarian interventions. For example, for the next cyclone season, which is coming next year. Last lesson learned is that there is a siloed vision of response and TRR for implementing organizations. So it is good to have the SOP that can bring those two activities together. And yeah, this will end my presentation. I think I stick to 5 minutes. Thank you. And if you have questions, I'll be happy to respond. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Andrea and Nina. You stick pretty much to the time. Thank you so much. I'm sure there will be questions. We'll please everyone keep the questions for a bit later. I will hand over the floor to our dear colleague Sumera. She's the Shelter and NFI and CCM sector coordinator in Pakistan. Sumera, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Francisco. So already Francisco has introduced me. So just giving you a background of Pakistan, since 1955 until 2024, Pakistan has experienced around 29 flooding events, where 20 there were more than those, but in 29 are the flooding events where we've got considerable damages and considerable effects for communities. So in 2022, it was a mega floods where 33 million people were affected and 2.1 million houses were damaged. As per the post-disaster needs assessment report, so these statistics are coming from there. So Pakistan cumulatively suffered 40 billion US dollars damage. So in 2024, again, we experienced flooding. But what we did based on the learning from 2022, I'm just going to present on that. So contingency planning is now an annual process in Pakistan, which is being led by NDMA, PDMA, and DDMAs. So the shelter NFI sector facilitate the joint contingency planning. And the window for contingency planning is between March till June or July, depending upon the weather forecast coming from Pakistan Meteorological Department. So what we do every year now is we define a minimum preparedness package, which is more or less the same kind of a stuff we do, which is basically we do the sector partner mapping. contingency stock mapping is recorded, the contingency stock mapping not only for the sector partners, but also with PDMAs, because now government after 2022 flooding is very responsive, and they are also managing stockpiles for certain level of people if they are affected. So the focal points are identified in the district level, in the local responders, so that they can act during the disaster phase. So the minimum response package is also defined, which is shelter, NFI, and CCCM sector standard response, which includes NFI kits, because usually in floods, we've seen that people who are displaced, they do not have ample time to rescue their household assets. So they need to get some household assets like kitchen sets for cooking. They need the basic clothing when they're displaced on the embankments and their houses are underwater. So we also do the emergency shelter kits, and the shelter repair toolkits are also provided. Then we also come up with the winterization kits, because in some of the areas in Pakistan, the weather changes um, are huge from northern areas to southern Pakistan. So in some regions it's cold, but in some region it's extreme heat. So we also do winterization kits. Then we also plan with sector partners for cash for work, which is mainly for removal of debris or doing the small scale repair works. So as the after 22 floods, we have started working together with the planning and development departments at the provincial levels, where they are conducting a massive housing reconstruction rehabilitation program, which is initially funded by World Bank, but now it's other donors are also coming on board, like Islamic Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, and they're providing this support. So after the validation, after PDNA's data, there was an on-spot validation when the flood water started receding. So that was around 6 to 8 months later. So the data which was verified, it showed that the damage, housing damage is more than 2.1 million. So 2.1 million housing damage is only in Sindh province. An additional 0.5 million is in Balochistan. So these are the two major these are the two provinces which got the major damage during 2022 floods, and they were inaccessible for doing the assessments. So the sector coordination we start during the same phase of contingency planning, and we from 2022 flooding we managed 90 more than 90 sector partners. But this year, for when we started doing the contingency planning for 2025, the sector partners has reduced till 30 to 35 partners only. This is also because the funding is saturated this time, and one of the biggest donor for shelter sector in Pakistan, which was USAID, is also pulled out. So we are also in the process of regularly updating the 5W metrics. We do 5W metrics not only for the disasters, pre-disaster and post-disaster scenarios, but also for the recovery partners who supporting government of Sindh in and government of Balochistan in housing reconstruction rehabilitation program. So we are all what we did after 2024, based on our learning from 2022, we supported the shelter sector, took part in the rapid observation mission in the post 2024 flood scenario in Sindh, Cape, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and Balochistan provinces. We are also promoted the local partner engagement and decentralized response capacities, and IOM being the lead of shelter and FI sector for post-disaster scenarios in Pakistan. So we also establish and run a common pipeline support system, where we have more than 120 partners registered who can based on their assessment, they can request for the different kind of kits we have available in common pipeline system. for distribution. So we do these distribution. It's very quick, and partners can register themselves through the common pipeline web link, and we do the spot checking and verification, and then we allocate the stocks to the partners on ground. So next slide, please. Yeah. So the challenges what we faced in 2024 flood was basically 2024 in comparison to 2022 floods was not as severe, and the impact was not that huge. So in 2024 there were displacements of around 150,000 people, and mostly in Sindh, but they altogether in 4 provinces, more than 0.5 million people were affected. So this was again not a huge number as compared to 2022 floods, where 33 million people were affected. So we also supported OCHA in different uh, in the information gap filling, because the shelter sector, which manages the 5 Ws, we shared this 5 Ws with the 5W was not as accurate as we were expecting, because partners were very busy since 2022 floods, and they were not that active in 2024. So the gap remained between the information collection. So the partners' readiness was also, there were different levels of readiness because of their capacity and availability of funding, and was also one of the challenges. And then in Pakistan, the registration process for local and international organizations is a long process, and that also hampers the capacity of the shelter partners. So logistical limitations, like the flood water was in some areas still remained underwater even after 1 year or 1.5 year of 2022 flood. So that remained a challenge. And 2024 flood, in some areas the water reached up to 3 feet height, which was again a challenge to access those areas. So the coordination challenge is also existing in terms of gap between the district level and the provincial level coordination on the needs and the verification of needs by provinces for the district level. The funding limitations I've already mentioned, funding limitation exists, and also when we do the SURF or the appeal, the emergency appeals. So always shelter sector is considered as most expensive sector, and does not get does not get up on the priority list. So next slide, please. So the lesson learned which we follow at the moment are basically we do the preparedness and mitigation measures, which include some pre-positioning of emergency stocks and improve warehouse accessibility. We're working with the PDMAs, the sector partners, and they are trying to either utilize PDMAs operated or established warehouses where the stocks are managed by the partners, and they are utilized during the floods. The shelter sector is also supporting the long-term recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction process, where we make sure that the new houses or new shelters, which are Pakka shelters, are constructed. So they have elevated structures, raised planes, and they are also in the water resistant material, like they're built in the fired brick. So we are also working on the sector is also supporting in different kind of pilot testing, where we can see that how we can reduce the carbon footprint of the fired brick Pakka houses. So the training and the trainings and community awareness is also being increased in communities on flood preparedness, safe evacuations, and telling them how and when they should be moving. The displacement should happen, and they should wait for district authorities support and the information dissemination. So the anticipatory action and the early warning system is also an important aspect because it helped reduce delays and strength in the local response mechanism, and it enabled early coordination and stockpiling and deployment of district coordinators. Because learning from 2022 floods, we saw that there was no coordination mechanism of OCHA present on ground during 2022 floods, and OCHA was also converting into a HAT structure in Pakistan, so it was very difficult. So this process helped us, the anticipatory action, to deploy some district coordinators in the field. So IOM being the lead on shelter and FI sector, we supported OCHA to hire district coordinators for 11 vulnerable districts in the anticipated vulnerable districts in Pakistan, in Punjab, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and Sindh province. So rapid observation missions were planned and commissioned just after the floods in 2024. And the first time in Pakistan, we prepared the flash appeal and surf request beforehand. And we were so ready. If the flood would have been much bigger, then we would have just changed the figures, and the all calculation must have been updated, and we were able to pitch these appeals in no time. The OCHA and NDMA supported the National Anticipatory Framework, and now we have a National Anticipatory Action Working Group under the leadership of NDMA, which supports in anticipatory action for floods and early warnings. So, and there was also a lesson learned that the provincial plans, the disaster management plans, need to be updated on the regular basis, and they need to have clear triggers when and what kind of stakeholders to engage and what to respond. Then simulation exercises are important because NDMA started from last year to conduct some simulation processes for different sectors, and these drills are organized with district and provincial authorities to engage them and to make them to strengthen their capacity to respond. The community engagement part, which is basically awareness raising on floods and preparedness and safe evacuation, and if there is a need of displacement, so how to go about it. So this is what we have from Pakistan, and I'm available for answering. I'm sorry if I've taken more time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Sumira.
Sumira.
We go now to South Sudan. Sherry, are you online? I think.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
And you don't have travels now with the sound. Perfect. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon, colleagues. I'm honored to share experiences from South Sudan. As you may be aware, South Sudan faces recurrent flooding year in and year out. So preparedness is not just necessary, but it is very essential. And I just noticed some of our activities are quite similar to those of Bangladesh and Pakistan. So I'll try to concentrate on those that are not mentioned, or even give more clarity on a few that are not explained further. For instance, given that our floods are predictable in South Sudan, we have a flood task force both at the national and subnational level, chaired by the government and co-chaired by OCHA, where ICCG, we give our inputs that inform the decisions. Just like Bangladesh, we have also implemented the subnational risk index that has been so accurate in predicting and forecasting the rains. And just to mention, South Sudan, the rains are not only in South Sudan, but the flood is also affected by the release of water from Uganda. I also wanted to focus on the community engagement aspect. We conduct the community engagement with the communities that are at risk of being affected by floods to kind of identify safer locations and be prepared just in case the floods hit. And not only that, in the IDP sites, we work with the CCCM cluster to identify shelters that are at risk or are damaged and reinforce them before the floods hit. I wanted to mention on the prepositioning, everyone talks about the prepositioning of items. As you may know, South Sudan, the markets are not functional. As much as we are pushing for cash-based response, usually floods also affect the markets and everyone is displaced. So prepositioning is an important aspect of Shelter and FI cluster to ensure timely response. Just to mention that we preposition early enough before the rain start. If we wait for the rainfall to start, all the roads are cut off, and just using the water transport not only is risky in terms of security, but also is very slow and it cannot transport the heavy loads of cargo. And also reliance on the helicopters is very tricky because usually not only costly, but may not be able to land in some locations. Also to mention that we are using the localized approach when it comes to construction of dikes and utilizing the local knowledge to try to build the capacities of the communities to respond on their own. Next. Yes, challenges. For South Sudan, I think we have several challenges, but I want to focus on the main ones. Funding continues to be our greatest, our biggest challenge, significantly impacting our preparedness initiatives. With the persistent decline in funding amidst growing needs, we are finding ourselves unable to achieve our preparedness plans. And this leaves our response capacity not only low, but it's stretched thin when floods finally strike. These compounding issues in terms of the multiple crises in South Sudan, for instance, we have the Sudan conflict, we have the internal conflict, the ongoing fighting in South Sudan, famine, we have disease outbreaks. Usually this leads to shift focusing. Instead of focusing on floods, apparently we are focusing on disease outbreak, and we know very soon, next month, we are having floods here, but everyone is now thinking about conflict and disease outbreak. Moreover, and sadly, the fund allocation process is not only slow, but it has bureaucratic tendencies that makes the whole process not only delayed but complicated. And this makes it very complicated for flood response preparedness. So usually you find the funds are released late, making the planning phase irrelevant and shifting our focus from preparedness to reaction. Additionally, once we wait for the rains to start, there are access constraints, rendering many locations not only unreachable but also unsafe. And as I mentioned, we only rely on water transport, which makes it very risky because there is ongoing conflict in most parts of the country where floods are also hitting hard. And then we also have multiple displacements. And multiple displacements because we map out some safer locations, but they are not always accurate to be safe. And for South Sudan, it's even risky because with displacements, people are displaced in different locations. Also, tracking their patterns is quite difficult because they move today here, the following day they move to another zone. And it makes it worse because also floods trigger conflict, intertribal conflict. So you find we are duplicating resources, and not easy to track our response. I also wanted to move just very fast to the next one, Mamen. Yes, the lessons learned. Quite many lessons learned, but mainly if we can have coordinated efforts in not only in response, but also advocacy for funds, messaging, resource mobilization, and implementation of the flood preparedness activities, This would be very crucial for achieving effective planning and harmonized responses. And also, if resources are released timely, this would really facilitate rapid and effective preparedness and response. Any delays in fund disbursements for procuring and prepositioning supplies can significantly compromise our preparedness and hence the response initiatives. Then prepositioning in advance ahead of the rain season allows for timely response before access becomes restricted. Then it is very important to improve our data systems. Otherwise, we keep wasting a lot of resources through duplication and also making it very impossible for us to be able to have better data. Then lastly, we continue to promote a cash-based response, but it's very important for us to recognize that in South Sudan, markets are not only, not functional, but are also affected by the floods. Therefore, having a plan B in terms of prepositioning items allows for a quicker and thank you. Over to you, Mamen.
Thank you very much, Lilian. Thank you very much also for going directly to the point. We have some comments and questions in the chat. Please continue putting some questions in the chat and interacting in the chat. Also, the presentation will be shared, so also you will have the details of this presentation. So now over to you, Ayman, in Yemen Shelter Cluster.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for Global Cluster for giving this opportunity for Yemen Shelter Cluster to give you an idea about flood interventions in Yemen. So just to give a brief about the context in Yemen, there are many IDP sites which are under flood effect each year. So they are facing like a recurring flood. And after this flood, the shelter cluster partners have to respond for the flood impact. So during 2024, the shelter cluster tried to look at the problem from another side and to look at this each site level to see what is the problem and how we can deal with it, like technically. 7 sites were selected and the technical assessment was done to find some mitigation measures and solutions for the flood impact. The purpose of this activity was to, in addition to find some solutions, to compare the response cost with the mitigation cost to see if we were in the right direction or no. Also, we compared the relocation costs in case we want to relocate this site from this area to another area, what will be the cost. So one of the interesting findings, as you see in the chart, this is the average cost for the 7 sites. You will see that the relocation cost is a bit high, but when we compare the mitigation cost with the response cost, it is a bit similar. You will also find that mitigation is less than the response cost. So that means that if we implement some preparedness and some hard activities before the flood, this will be less costly than doing a response after the flood. In the right side, you will see like 2 photos, just to give you an example about the types of mitigation measures proposed. You will see in the photo before, this is an IDP site. It was located in an area where the water is collected each rainy season. During the technical assessment, it was found that this site was located in a wrong area, which caused to a blockage of the culvert, which let the water move between the 2 sides of the street. And this led to this, the water to stagnant near to the IDP site, which were affecting them. So in the below picture, you will see that the technical solution was to open a drainage channel for the water to pass through the IDP site and to clean the culvert to let the water go smoothly to the other side of the street. If you can go to the next picture, just to the next slide, you will see the situation before. How was the people suffering before the interventions? And after the cluster partners did some interventions to the IDP site. This intervention was by support from Global Cluster. And when we calculated the cost, it was less than the response cost needed each year. Next slide, just to go briefly on the challenges and the lesson learned. So one of the challenges we face is increasing flood in conflict areas during the recent year. Like in the recent 3 or 4 years, many such impact happening to many IDP sites in Yemen. At the same time, there is a lack of fund for different activities, including flood mitigation measure activities. Also, one of the challenges is that these interventions is needed not in 1 or 2 sites. Maybe more than 500 sites have the same problem. And as you know, each site, when you are talking about technical interventions, you need to do like technical assessment for this specific site. It's not something general that can be done for collectively to all IDP sites. Also, we face some HLP issues when we want to do such hard activities in the IDP sites. Now moving to the lesson learned, we found that these activities are more accepted by the community. Also, these mitigation interventions will reduce the cost which is needed yearly for response. And also it will what we found that it opened the door for some additional interventions, like similar interventions. Now we are working on some systems for early warning and so on. So that's it from mine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iman, for this very specific example of ways that it can be implemented within IDP sites and now we have a couple of we can have a couple of minutes for the questions, if there are questions for any of the 5 presenters. There is one question, Mandy. Do you want to go ahead and ask Iman? And if we have a second question also, we can take after Mandy's.
Sure, yes. Thank you all for your presentations. Ayman, I was just wondering if at some point it might be possible to share the methodology for the flood risk assessment and also the cost comparison, not necessarily the results, but the methodology, the process of how they were done. I think some clusters might find this useful. We've been in discussion with a few others on flood risk assessment. So I think it could be helpful as a next step at some point. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mandy. Yes, for sure. We already shared the technical assessment previously this year, so I can share the link. Maybe it's a bit technical bit, but within the assessment there are some parts which is talking about the methodology and so on. So I will be sharing within the chat.
Is there any other question? Lilia, go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentations. My apologies because I had to leave the meeting for, I think, for about 10 minutes. So I don't know if you already discussed this, but I'm interested in knowing about the sources of data when you are doing, for example, a flood risk assessment or any risk assessments. If you're relying on satellite data, satellite imagery, and where do you get the data for that? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Now, regarding the recurring of the impact of flood, we collected from the partner who is managing the site. They have information about how many times it happens, like yearly or maybe more than one time a year. And regarding impact, we have also, there are some information which is collected at site level about what was the need to respond. Sometimes not all the need is covered within the same year, but we already have some information about what was the need, for example, for this year. So based on that, we can calculate the impact of the flood when it happens. Over.
If there is any other colleague also that would like also to comment on this point.
If I may, I'm Sumaira from Pakistan. So in Pakistan, we rely on the satellite images, or also NDMA has established the NEOC, which is a National Emergency and Operation Cells, which is working 24/7, and this has a huge satellite imagery system and live, what do you call, flood monitoring gauges or something. The telemetry system which is supporting them, and they're producing the DOC, which is which are the same unit at the district level, and then a same unit at the provincial level, which is monitoring the data from the field. So this is a wide network, and they also work with the Ministry of Water Resources and Power, where the Federal Flood Commission is housed. So they also have the data available. Then we have NDMRF, which is National Disaster Risk Management Fund. They have also established a NetCat data modeling center in Islamabad, which is also replicated at provincial and district levels. They also have a system of recording the satellite images and also monitoring the flood flows through the flood gauges at the different locations. So this is how we are triangulating data, and it's being disseminated and it's also being triangulated with the Pakistan Meteorological Department data. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alex, and maybe just the last comment, Alex, and we go to the next.
Yeah. UNHCR shared a few months ago a guide to explain how to collect local data on floods. I'll share the link in the chat. So I think it's quite useful, and you may contact the colleagues from the Geneva Technical Hub about that. Thanks.
Thank you so much. We see already the link. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, in the interest of time, let's go to the next slide. Here we have been checking in the 2025 HRPs and also in other strategic documents, but might be that we haven't included all the different strategic documents. If that's the case, also let us know, and this is something we can keep updating. We have seen, we were looking for how present was possible to keep DRR activities related in the shelter cluster chapter within the strategic documents, or in the cluster objectives and the priorities. You see here, the vast majority, you have included the type of activities that are linked to disaster risk reduction. They are also many times mentioned, these components, in the analysis of the needs. However, what we have less information about and would like to know from your side is what happened after the reprioritization of the strategic plans, because we understand in many cases the reprioritization was also heavily focused on different type of activities. And this is something we'd like, let's go to the next slide, please, Hussein. We'd like to go through a quick Menti to better understand what is the situation on the floods preparedness. So it was triggered by this analysis of the HRPs, and now we'd like to know a little bit more on the different points that they can help us understanding the situation. But also, this is an open forum now, so please, at the same time, we'll be checking the responses. Feel free to open the mic and comment when you see the results. Please connect to Menti through the QR code or the number or link if you want, so we can also copy the link in the chat if that is easier. And then, Hussein, over to you when there is any, when we have some responses to the first question, we can change to Menti screen. Can keep the chat, then the link and the number. And we can go to the to Menti.
Yes, just 1 second. I'm trying to present the results.
In the meantime, also, we were the type of questions you are going to find in Menti are related to the general situation on floods preparedness, followed by the actions that we had more clearly identified when we were last year analyzing the situation of the flood. So we had in the preparedness, in the advocacy document, a call to action, and we had 4 points. One, it was increase the funding for shelter response, specifically also to respond to the flood. But we had also a point on prepositioning stocks that Lilian has elaborated quite well in the case of South Sudan. We had another point on a specific increase investment in climate adaptation, DRR, and anticipatory action. And this is where we would like to see if we are going through a particular growth situation in the traditional way of advocating for funding, to see if we need to go beyond the traditional way. And then we had a last point on empowerment of local communities for flood preparedness, develop low-tech early warning system, map vulnerable areas, and strengthen natural defenses. Oh, sorry, Alex, it seems we cannot answer the question.
Yeah, we have only 2
working?
answers. I think 2 people answers.
Oh, what?
Yes, I'm having
maybe
the
it's
same
coming
problem.
back now. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, we're starting now. We had a technical issue with the previous try. We will enter the question now.
Yeah, it works now.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, so we have 10 clusters with a flood preparedness plan. I'd like to ask here if somebody would like to comment on the process of the flood preparedness plan this year. Do we have anybody interested in? Monir, please go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, this is an important topic, given that Sudan has had the worst climate emergencies in the century. Back in 2020, where actually about 800 people were affected, and last year alone, it was nearly 700,000 people affected. And we had about 66,000 houses were destroyed and another 52,000 people were damaged. So that gave the importance for us to come up with an emergency preparedness and response plan for the upcoming season. And we worked in a very sophisticated kind of analysis that we managed to combine historical flood patterns, but also hazard mapping and also lesson learned from previous emergencies. And we focused on 3 elements: the preparedness actions, the prepositioning, and the emergency response. But also we had a focus on early recovery, which we thought is critical for us to work on the parameters from now, so that kind of not be forgotten after the emergency. So this is what we have in thought, and now we are almost in the final stage to put final touches and also release it in the coming few days. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing it, and feel free also sharing this in maybe in the coordinators Teams network, or this type of documents can be very valuable for other clusters also as a reference. I see another hand. I think it's Lilia. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mamen. Just to add on to what South Sudan has mentioned, for South Sudan, we have 2 levels of planning. One is the worst case scenario, where we look at those heavy activities, preparedness activities, and also the costing and the response packages are kind of different. And then we also have the medium scenario planning with the different package in terms of initiatives. I just wanted to add to what Sudan is doing. Thank you, Over.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to the next question. So here it's more on specific activities that you do have in your cluster, and thinking on activities that are ongoing now, or that you have planned but they are funded. Okay, we have 6, and we have 2 that they say no. Let's move on to the next one, because like this we can know a little bit more on the type of activity, the ones that the 6 that you have answered yes. We'd love to hear or to read the type of activity that you do have at present ongoing. Or as we said, it can be planned, but has to be with budget that is committed. Maybe we can already say, for those that you have answered no, the next question is going to be the reasons. Maybe you want to take the mic in the interest of time also. We can hear from the reasons why you don't have them. If you can think ahead. Okay. So the type of activities that we have here. Okay. Very interesting. Thank you. Mapping stocks, community engagement, flood resilient shelters on house, settlements of proof, community mapping, awareness raising. Okay, that's very interesting, and we will also share with all of you. And let's move on then to the next question, the ones that you have say no, if you want to share with us the reasons. And maybe if it is faster, just you can open the mic. Would like to know if there are barriers that we haven't discussed, or if they are the traditional ones, or if you think this in the particular context where you are is not a priority. Okay, I don't know if maybe they changed their mind. And is this the reply to? Yes, okay, we didn't have the other question, no problem. So here, about the HNRPs, as we were before explaining, we saw at some level, in the majority of the clusters, you have included this type of initiatives. What we don't know is if after the reprioritization you manage. So we have 6 that they have been affected. Would you like to comment what has been the impact? Anybody answering that it has been affected? Waweru, please, go ahead.
Yes,
And then Ayman.
the impact of prioritization is in terms of ensuring that we have resources for planned responses, and these have been affected by the prioritization of the sectors that felt that were dealing with the right-saving activity. And for example, and a good example for Somalia, during the reprioritization, that's when drought was the main read for the displacement, and at the same time, in between, like 3 weeks ago, again we had flash floods happening. You see, because of reprioritization, resources were not allocated to all sectors, but they went to key sectors that were felt that were in need, forgetting other sectors that might be affected by unforeseen emergencies. So through this, you find that within now the shelter clusters, we don't have enough resources that can support those who have been affected by the flood in the last 3 weeks flash floods. This is how the impact of reprioritizations have affected the allocation of resources equally across the sectors. Back to you, Mame.
Thank you, Waweru. Over to Ayman and then Lilian.
Yes, here also in Yemen, we had to give priority for more emergency activities and some longer term activities like flood mitigation measures and interventions that were done before the flood. They were impacted. Over.
Lilian.
Yes, I can get it. Thanks, Mamin. Just to mention that part of reprioritization has been reducing the figures in terms of people and also the activities and locations. Some areas have been considered as low risk, yet we know they are risk areas because of the focus on funds, and some activities, for instance, dike construction and not being prioritized as life-saving. It has been a shift from preparedness now to response, which is very risky. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much for sharing. Let's continue. You're gonna need at least a few minutes more. I hope that's fine for the majority of you. If you need to leave also, we can understand that we are gonna be a bit over time. Well, this, in case it's not an HNRP, in case this was other type of strategic documents, it has been, okay, we have 2 people answering, yes, it has been affected. If any of you would like to open the mic and comment, we can go to the next question, and while we listen, what has been the impact. Would you like to comment? Okay, so here, following on the contingency stock component, 2 clusters, you responded yes. has been possible. The one that say no, was it possible the previous year? Do you want to comment? We don't have an answer of the person. Okay, let's continue. And the reasons, maybe we don't have this person. I don't know if we can continue because the person didn't reply. Or were you the person? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
I was the person who said no, and
okay.
We were not in a position even to pre-position because we found ourselves without resources, and we have tried as much as possible again now to start engaging with HC and OCHA to see how we can well be supported to ensure that we get resources to the places that we know will be affected, because once the flooding strikes, we will not be able to respond within the stipulated time. It takes longer time, and these are challenging, and it turns not to be a life-saving activity.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I believe this is the last question was on the role of communities, but we have been already, unless there is somebody who would like to share something that hasn't been shared before by the colleagues that they presented, this is a topic that was quite well covered by the presentation. Let's go now over to you, Francisco, to this next slide. Sorry, Hussein, we see it's not on presentation mode. We see the rest of the information. Now we see Teams only. Perfect.
Thank you, everyone. For the sake of time, I'll go very briefly through this before I pass it to Mandy to talk about the next steps. We've been discussing this internally now. Can we help the different country classes out to articulate ideas around for advocacy purposes and to structure their own priorities? If in any way we could support you, or at country level, if you think you can do it locally, to try to measure the cost of action and the cost of inaction. I think it's important. There are ways. There's probably sufficient data, and with linking to your context to prove that early action, proper contingency planning, linkages between mitigation and risk reduction can de facto save lives and can be cost saving and can and the opposite as well. I think it's both sides. Probably it depends on how you want to be constructive, but sometimes you need to also to prove that not doing so can be life-threatening. I don't know, think about it. We will try to see how. Please reach out to us if you think this is something you'd like to engage in, and we'll try to work with you and on how to find data or ways of analyzing data and to represent this data to be in a compelling way to support your argument when negotiating priorities and when trying to structure strategies and your advocacy with donors and partners. I'll pass on to Mandy. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Francisco. And I think, yeah, maybe also our colleagues in Yemen have some good experience of this kind of cost measurements that can be shared with us a bit more at some point. But I'll just quickly talk a bit about some of the resources that we have to support DRR mainstreaming more broadly, of course, including flood risk mitigation. So you heard a couple of cases from Yemen and Madagascar earlier, which have received some support from UNDRR. We've been working together over the last few months in a variety of countries, but we've also been producing some resources to support your work. So there's this entry points document for DRR mainstreaming and humanitarian shelter and settlement interventions, which is a really useful guide to stimulate some ideas overall. Then we have specific documents for needs overview and response planning that are actually began their lives as environment and climate change tip sheets, but they now include DRR. I think you're probably quite familiar with those already. Hopefully you've also seen the guidance for shelter clusters on funding sources for integrating DRR and environment. So this is a bit of a think piece on various alternative sources of funding, which hopefully is useful also in the current climate. If you could pass to the next, oh, and actually, if I could ask a colleague to pop the links in the chat, they're in the notes of the presentation, that would be super helpful. Technical resource-wise, a couple I wanted to mention. Kelly in the chat just mentioned a few minutes ago the Flood Green Guide from WWF, very, very helpful in nature-based flood management techniques. You may all be aware as well of the UNHCR Compendium of Flood Risk Mitigation Measures as well. So we can pop the links of those in the chat too. And then just a quick mention on the next slide, please, of the Shelter Projects Flood Compendium, which again, you may have already seen, but a really amazing compilation of all of the Shelter Projects case studies that are relevant for floods. But it's not only listing the case studies, there's a really good synthesis and analysis of lessons learned coming from all of those cases. And then finally, to conclude, on the next slide, some next steps. So we are exploring ways to continue working with UNDR to provide more support to other clusters. Work is still ongoing in Yemen, expanding to some new sites. We're just been starting up work to support the Nigeria cluster through a UNDR consultant and the Green Team for looking at DRR environment strengthening in responses there through a scoping study, some training and awareness raising workshops around floods, but also fire and extreme heat risk, and then developing action plans and advocacy materials. And that's sort of amongst the backdrop of the transition away from the OCHA-led coordination mechanism. Also, most likely starting some support in Mali as well, still in discussion with the cluster there and UNDR on this, but that would be more focused on flood risk mitigation in specific sites and also developing an assessment methodology that can be scaled up. So some nice links, I think, to the work in Yemen there, and also contingency planning and capacity building of partners. So we will continue to try and explore opportunities for more support on that front and trying to fundraise or other kind of technical support that we can provide. Also support around evidence-based advocacy around the issues such as the one that Francisca mentioned about the cost of inaction, and sort of data and evidence around that to support advocacy and of course fundraising as well. And then maybe just to finish off, I'll pass back to Mamen to talk about the peer-to-peer coordinators network as well. Over to you, Mamen.
Thank you so much, Mandy. Just to maybe encourage all of you to share the good practices that you have been sharing also here, the pieces of work that you think can be relevant for other countries in your similar context, by region, by the type of situation. For coordinators, we do have this Teams channel that is, I think it was 1 month ago when it was started, and it's a good way to share information that you think, or to look for information if you think others can be working on a similar thing. And also, of course, in any other way, you can reach out to us. We can put you in contact with other coordinators, IMOs, or technical coordinators, or any other colleagues in other countries. But just to to have in this type of information sharing meetings this idea, no, that you are doing very interesting things to other countries in the same region or in a similar situation, and it'll be very good if you would like to share this. That's all. Thank you very much. We will share the notes and the video for all of you. Thank you very much for the participation.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Well done.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thanks,
Thanks for all
everyone.
the sharing.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Mhm.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.